Why do you believe what you believe? Because at some point in your life, you trusted the information that somebody was giving you. And that someone you trusted told you that a car was a car, a tree was a tree, a bird was a bird, the blue stuff above you is the sky. And that's the way that we began to determine what we believe to be a fact. Most of the things that we believe to be a fact in our lives are told to us through our stories or the news that we hear. So my question would be, if they were deceiving you with the stories they tell you, would you be able to recognize that?
Hey guys, welcome back. That's such a great movie. I'm actually gonna use another clip in the next module, but you should check it out. I put it in the links. It's called Out of Shadows. It's really good. It's really good food for thought. I thought it's really well made. And I think that they're gonna make a sequel, so I'm excited about the next one. So I wanted to talk about censorship and the media, especially, you know, this is very apropos to what's going on right now. So let's begin. Let's open up our books and we'll start, okay? Most of the things that we believe to be fact in our lives are told through us through our stories and news that we hear. So my question would be, if they were deceiving you with the stories they tell you, would you be able to recognize it? Just like the dude said in the movie, right? Would you? Right? Do you think that you have the discernment to be able to tell? It's kind of creepy, right? Like, you think that maybe if you want to think of yourself as a smart person, and I think most people do, you know, they want to think that they'll be able to have the wisdom or the discernment to tell, but it depends on where you are in your life. It depends on, you know, if you are open-minded, it depends on the information that you have access to. And one of the reasons why censorship is very detrimental to our growth is the fact that if people don't have the right access to different information, then they may not be able to make the proper decisions because they're not well informed. Okay. Next page. Next page. Do you like the movies? Let's go to the movies. Let's go see the stars. Cowboy heroes, cops and robbers, glamour and strife, bigger than life. Anyway, it's me being goofy. All right, so movies. Who likes the movies? Everybody likes movies, right? Movies. I'm not going to lie. We all love movies. They're entertaining and enriching. The majority of people have very fond memories attached to movies and the characters that are in them. A solid narrative or documentary can get us thinking deeply about the world we live in because they force us to see a situation through another person's eyes. With that said, let's talk about how movies can be used for malevolent purposes. Yeah, sorry to burst your bubbles, you guys. I'm all excited, get you excited about movies, and then I'm like, they're evil. Now let's talk about how they can brainwash you with movies. This is a conspiracy realist course, all right? So just bear with me for minutes, or a few more minutes, or however long this module is gonna be. But, you know, it doesn't have to be a bad thing. And I'm not saying never stop watching movies. The movies are great. I mean, it's a huge conglomeration of all types of art. You have music and visual arts and acting and dancing and design and lighting design. I mean, there's so many facets that go into making a movie. And I think they're wonderful. They're wonderful. I have nothing against movies, but just bear with me and let's talk about how motion pictures have been and can be used for psychological warfare. I actually left a link to this video or to this document in Scribd. There's a used copy that you can get in Scribd, and you don't have to join Scribd to read it. It looks like you can read it. without having to do that. But there's a picture of it on the right-hand side, and then I'm just going to read this paragraph right here. So, all right. Motion pictures and psychological warfare. A government document that was declassified titled Motion Pictures as a Weapon of Psychological Warfare. It states that its objective is to explore the potentialities of motion pictures as a weapon of psychological warfare through the United States. This document also states the motion picture is one of the most powerful propaganda weapons at the disposal of the United States. It was known that this can be potentially nefarious use of motion pictures to sway public opinion. The Smith-Mundt Act of 1948 limited or prohibited the government from propagandizing its own citizens through controlling the narrative. On December 29, 2012, President Barack Obama signed H.R. 4310, the National Defense Authorization Act. The NDAA Section 1078 of the bill authorizes the use of propaganda inside the U.S., which had previously been banned since 1948 when the Smith-Mundt Act was passed. This changed the Smith-Mundt Act by taking away the government's limit and prohibition of propagandizing its own citizens by controlling the narrative. So if you actually read that document, it's not going to say, oh, we can propagandize the citizens. It's going to say something to the fact. They always juice it up, right? If you look at it through this whole course, you have to read between the lines. So they're not going to come out and say it, but they're going to say, oh, we're going to use it to boost morale or make people, but basically you can boost morale by spreading lies about other countries, by spreading lies about other people in their own country. Look at what's going on now with the political situation, right? Look at how the media is very one-sided in its description of one set of people and not really open to, the other set of people, right? So this is where it gets very dangerous because you can incite violence, you can incite hatred with the propaganda that you use, whether it's in your own country or whether it's against another country.
Army General Paul Nakasone, who heads both NSA and Cyber Command, said recently that both the military and the nation as a whole are taking steps to counter foreign information warfare and to use information operations against adversaries. Specifically, he's talking about Russia and China. The point that both of those nations have taken steps to control information on the internet in order to prevent their populations from being influenced by the U.S. He was talking about the Arab Spring uprisings that began in 2011. Nakasone says they were fueled by social media and the internet, and they led to the unseating of several governments throughout the Middle East and North Africa. Quote, "We looked at this as an indicator of how powerful a free and open internet can be in the world. And we looked at this from that lens. But I would also say that our adversaries looked at it from a completely different lens, as an existential threat to their existence." That's what Nakasone said, but what he didn't tell you, and what you may not know, is that the U.S. government has countered the influence, they say, of foreign propaganda by passing a law that allows our government to propagandize its own people. See, the 2016 version of the NDAA, or the National Defense Authorization Act, signed by President Obama, included a provision called the Countering Foreign Propaganda and Disinformation Act of 2016. It was sponsored by Ohio Senator Rob Portman, and it was actually designed, he says, to combat foreign propaganda from Russia, China, and Iran. Senator Portman said this about the act at the time, quote, "Surprisingly, there is currently no single U.S. governmental agency or department charged with the national level deployment, integration, and synchronization of whole-of-government strategies to counter foreign propaganda and disinformation." Again, that was in 2016. See, this bipartisan bill established an interagency center housed at the State Department. Its job is to coordinate and to synchronize counter-propaganda efforts throughout the U.S. government. Okay, but it actually does much more than that. It also creates a grant program for NGOs, for think tanks, and civil society as well as those who are already engaged in, quote, counter-propaganda related work. But let's be clear, this concept was actually sold as countering propaganda. But here's the thing. If government agencies put out or fund information that is disseminated to the public for the purpose of altering or controlling a point of view, isn't that the very definition of propaganda? Because in fact, the definition of propaganda is this, quote, information, ideas, or rumors deliberately spread widely to help or harm a person, group, movement, institution, nation, etc. So this law funds U.S. propaganda against its own citizens. Now, before you object and say, wait, that can't be true because it's illegal for the U.S. to propagandize its own citizens, well, you were right. It was. Until 5 years ago. In 2013, that version of the National Defense Authorization Act removed a ban on U.S. government creating and then showing propaganda to U.S. citizens. That ban had been in place since 1948, and the 2013 amendment struck down a ban on domestic dissemination of material produced by the State Department and the Independent Broadcasting Board of Governors. See, it neutralized the Smith-Mundt Act of 1948 and the Foreign Relations Authorization Act of 1987, which have been passed to protect U.S. audiences from our own government's misinformation campaigns. So what you need to know is that in 2013, when that act passed, most media said, don't worry, because even though it's now legal for the U.S. government to create propaganda, there's no funding mechanism. But in 2016, the funding mechanism was added. And now in 2018, the head of the NSA says we are in a weaponized information war with Russia and China. There was a reason why, for over 60 years, it was illegal for the U.S. government to propagandize the public. Because forget about Russia and forget about China. That law was in place to protect the public from our own government. So what is the answer here? Well, how about the media in America just tells the truth, just reports facts, does not act as arms of political parties on the right or on the left, doesn't act as a mouthpiece for government institutions. See, if we want to combat propaganda, both foreign and domestic, then we should be pushing for a free and open system that informs the public, rather than trying to control what they believe.
Well, just as in World War II, this country could use its news media to propagandize and make the whole American public love the Germans and the Japanese, rather love the Russians and the Chinese and hate the Germans and the Japanese. And then after the war, they changed it and made the American public love the Germans and love the Japanese, hate the Russians and hate the Chinese, which shows that they can make the American public love whom they will and hate whom they will. And that same process can be used to re-educate the American public and show white people how to love black people and show black people how to do something to stand on our own feet and solve our own problems.
So Malcolm X. All right, so Malcolm X in the clip said the media can be used for good and bad, right? So Malcolm X stated that media could be used to control foreign relations with other countries, but he also stated that if it can be used for bad, it can also be used for good. So how do we know the intentions of the media and what they have in mind? 6. All right. 6 corporations that rule the world. The fact that a few companies own everything demonstrates the illusion of choice. The 6 corporations that own the media, also known colloquially as the Big Six, GE, Disney, Time Warner, Viacom, CS, News Corp. These corporations control as much as 90% of all the media in the United States. Consequently, this creates a sort of echo chamber in the media world, from television to radio news.
Beep, beep, beep.
Propaganda. Many use the word when talking about countries like North Korea, Kazakhstan, Iran. Countries viewed as authoritarian through the lens of the Western media. Press freedom, freedom of thought. People use those terms when talking about countries like the United States, France, Australia, democracies. In 1988, Noam Chomsky co-authored a book with Edward Herman called Manufacturing Consent. It blasted apart the notion that media acts as a check on political power, that media inform the public, serve the public, so that we can better engage in the political process. In fact, media manufacture our consent. They tell us what those in power need them to tell us so we can fall in line. Democracy is staged with the help of media that work as propaganda machines. Media operate through 5 filters. The first has to do with ownership. Mass media firms are big corporations. Often they're part of even bigger conglomerates. Their endgame, profit. And so it's in their interests to push for whatever guarantees that profit. Critical journalism takes second place to the needs and interests of the corporation. The second filter exposes the real role of advertising. Media costs a lot more than consumers will ever pay. So who fills the gap? Advertisers. And what are the advertisers paying for? Audiences. And so it isn't so much that the media are selling you a product, their output. They're also selling advertisers a product, you. How does the establishment manage the media? That's the third filter. Journalism cannot be a check on power because the very system encourages complicity. Governments, corporations, big institutions know how to play the media game. They know how to influence the news narrative. They feed media scoops, official accounts, interviews with the experts. They make themselves crucial to the process of journalism. So those in power and those who report on them are in bed with each other. If you want to challenge power, you'll be pushed to the margins. Your name won't be down. You won't be getting in. You've lost your access. You've lost the story. When the media, journalists, whistleblowers, sources, stray away from the consensus, they get flat. That's the fourth filter. When the story is inconvenient for the powers that be, you'll see the flat machine in action, discrediting sources, trashing stories, and diverting the conversation. To manufacture consent, you need an enemy, a target. That common enemy is the fifth filter. Communism, terrorists, immigrants, a common enemy. A boogeyman to fear helps corral public opinion. 5 filters, one big media theory. Consent is being manufactured all around you, all the time.